Again, good afternoon. Thank you for joining Greenshades webinar for payroll for staffing firms. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Greenshades Payroll as well as the Bullhorn applicant tracking system and our integration with that. As we get moving into this webinar, again, just a reminder, if you do have any questions or if I move on something a little bit too fast, feel free to put those questions in the chat as we get started. We'll either get to those in this webinar or we'll follow up with you directly as we can. Hopefully we answer a lot of the questions throughout this webinar. But if you do have anything that we don't answer, again, we can follow up with you directly. And also we have our email addresses and contact information here at the end of this webinar as well. Today, I'm Rob Bright. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at Greenshades. I've been here since about 2010. I've had a lot of different hats here at Greenshades, as multiple of us have who have been tenured employees. I got a big background in staffing and manufacturing, so I've helped thousands of those clients with streamlining their payroll and HR processes. And here today with me, we also have Chris Hadden. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Hey, everybody. Chris Hadden with Greenshades, certified payroll professional, and been fortunate to be at Greenshades since 2009. So Rob and I have had the opportunity to work a lot over the years, and like Rob, had a number of different roles over the years here at Greenshades, which is one of the great things about working for a company as they're going through growth. Started as a really small organization, and then I've seen a lot of growth since then. So my different roles over the years in sales, and then product on the product development side, and compliance and quality assurance, and a variety of different things. And then today, overseeing our revenue strategy and operations here at Greenshades. So thanks everybody for joining the call today.
Yeah, I'm lucky to get to work with Chris back here on the sales side as he and I head up our revenue teams along with our marketing team and try to make Greenshades the big payroll system it should be, as a lot of people are finding out today. The agenda we're going to touch on is just an introduction into Greenshades, kind of what our relationship and partnership with Bullhorn looks like as we get rolling. We're going to talk about some of the obstacles and opportunities that staffing companies have, specifically around payroll and HR, and obviously in our partnership with Bullhorn, how they can streamline some of these obstacles that they might encounter. So just talking about some of the challenges that we're seeing in the industry today, that we're getting feedback from clients, and that we're just finding ourselves as we're trying to help those clients as much as possible. And then we're going to talk about Greenshades' actual payroll and HCM system. I'm going to go over a quick payroll demonstrations, really high level. So please don't believe we're going to see every bell and whistle here within the hour. However, it will give you a good introduction into what our payroll system is, what it does, how that integration with Bullhorn will work, and how we help thousands of clients today. So if you have any questions during that demonstration or a one-on-one demonstration, whether you're a system integrator or an actual client or use Greenshades today and you just weren't familiar with some of these features that I might go over, feel free to put some information in the chat or follow with us up directly after the actual webinar. And then we're going to talk about the unified approach that we have with Bullhorn and that integration and how it can help you, again, tackle some of those obstacles, but also really just streamline your back office processes. And then we'll take some questions here at the end. So we do have a couple poll questions as we get rolling through the webinar. This is just to capture some information. So we're helping clients with this webinar information. We do try to be kind of a thought leader in the payroll and HR space. So if there's any specific compliance issues or anything like that that you'd like to see a future webinar on, please give us that feedback. And we're trying to collect as much of that feedback through some of these poll questions as possible, right? So just here, this is a poll question just specifically asking you about some of the most challenging aspects as a staffing firm you might be facing, right? And if you're not a staffing firm, for whatever reason, you're a different type of business, what do you see in the staffing space, or what do you see in your own business related to some of the answers that we have here? So we'll leave that poll open here for about 30, 45 seconds or so, and then continue moving in the webinar. And Chris, if you were a staffing firm today, or at least from the staffing firms that you're talking to, is there any one of these that are really jumping out at you that you would answer?
Yeah, I think especially right now, the transparent and timely employee communication is so critical. Certainly all of these things can be quite critical and can be challenging to deal with, but obviously the market is in a unique place right now. I think it's so critical to be able to have that timely communication because there's so many employees and candidates that are at risk right now, and so staying in touch with those individuals on a regular basis is very important.
Definitely, and I would agree with that. And I think all of these are great answers. I personally, as we try to staff out Greenshades and our teams, attracting talent and keeping that talent on our teams is definitely a big one for me. All right, and just as we go through this, we're going to kind of introduce Greenshades and Bullhorn as a partnership to you. So you might be familiar with kind of Greenshades, obviously, and Bullhorn as separate entities. Greenshades has been around for about 20 years, and so has Bullhorn. And really, we've had a lot of mutual clients across the years. And Greenshades specifically has specialized in integrations and worked with other ERPs and other payroll systems for a very long time. Whether it's from other staffing, ERPs that are out there in the space like Aviante, Aiken Cloud, et cetera. We have a ton of different integrations listed on our site. We've been helping other payroll systems and staffing companies just with complex challenges for a very long time. And Bullhorn on their side, as they've grown their system and acquired different companies and become such a large entity that they are today, they've tackled all of the front office challenges that now are kind of pulling in a lot of these different back office processes and kind of bringing a lot of those pieces together that they have with Bullhorn One. Right, so just in thinking through kind of a complete end-to-end solution with Greenshades and Bullhorn, what do we cover on our side? Obviously, from payroll all the way through some of those challenges on the HR side, we cover all of the tax and compliance pieces related to payroll. So as people move or their work site locations, or you care about reciprocity in places like Ohio or Pennsylvania, Greenshades has been a compliance-focused organization for a very long time, and all of our pieces across payroll and HR, all the way down to taxes, obviously, are very focused in keeping our clients compliant, right? So as large organizations on the staffing side, as they have transient employees or a lot of turnover, as that is their business, it's very important to ensure you're keeping up with those tax rates, keeping up with that front of house information as it's driving a lot of those payroll changes, right? So we have kind of a full end-to-end solution on the payroll side, all the way from those changes that happen kind of on the front end employee side for W-4 changes and tax changes, et cetera, all the way down to integrating with whatever general ledger you might be using. So if you're using, Bullhorn specifically on the applicant tracking side, that information is coming to Greenshades. You're going to net to check to Greenshades through Greenshades, then you're doing billing back in Bullhorn, and then where's your general ledger information going? What ERP are you using, et cetera? Where's that information coming from? That's what we're experts in. We can help you across multiple different systems that you might be using throughout that kind of life cycle. And then on the HR side, whether it's presenting employee pay stub information online, all the way to driving open enrollment and benefits enrollment and tracking some of the ACA pieces, ensuring that you're actually offering benefits when you need to through an easy-to-use portal. That's a big portion of what our actual employee portal does focus on. We have an employee application that can be downloaded Android, Apple, et cetera, a lot of mobile friendly web browser pieces as well across this entire HR system. So a lot of front end information for your employees to make those changes, empower them to actually streamline those, create a lot of efficiencies in the business that actually help out your payroll and HR admins as they go through their day-to-day job, right? And throughout all those different pieces, we're keeping you compliant along the way, right? So if you're collecting time in Bullhorn or in Greenshades for some of your internal employees or something along those lines, or time off requests, et cetera, we can cross multiple systems, have the integrations to make that sustainable and not create duplicate entry points along the way. All of that information is being housed in our payroll system to ensure that the end result, that outcome of that check, is accurate at the end of the day, right? So we cover everything that you could think of related to the HR side, from profile changes to direct deposit changes, W-4 changes, both on the federal and the state level, I-9 captures through either an onboarding process or as they actually go and enroll in our portal online, and then have some nice tools on the payroll side around PTO accruals and some pieces around garnishments and some other compliance-focused assets that'll help you actually ensure those checks are accurate. So been around a long time, focused on compliance, supplementing other payroll systems, and helping out hundreds of staffing clients and thousands of our actual own clients. We have close to 4,000 clients today. Bullhorn, been around 20 years as well, has about 10,000 plus clients on their side, right? So together, we help streamline, the end-to-end process across, the back office for these staffing companies. So it's really a seamless transition from that applicant tracking system to Greenshades Payroll. We're doing real-time tax calculations as those W-4 changes are happening on either side. We're ensuring it's updating in the employee record and in payroll as you're cutting the next check, right? We have the field proven expertise on the staffing side, just from working with so many hundreds of staffing clients, tens of staffing specific softwares to ensure that we're helping keep those clients compliant as possible. So we do, W-2 distribution, 1099 distribution, 1095Cs as well. A lot of entry points into introducing to Greenshades has started on that kind of year-end side as people close out payroll, close out AP. They're looking for kind of a single source option to create those e-files, distribute the forms. A lot of people get familiar with Greenshades that way and then kind of expand based on how else we can help them with tax compliance. And then now, obviously, we're helping them all the way up to payroll compliance through the end of the year taxes. Not only that, but pseudo files, local taxes, everything you might need to stay compliant as a tax organization, paying employees in multiple different states, right? Chris, obviously, I said a lot of different words in that. Anything you can think of that I might have missed, feel free to chime in as I know I'm moving a little fast, touching on some of these intro points related to Greenshades. No?
You're good. Go ahead.
Great. We got some nice quotes here from some of our staffing clients as well on how we've helped streamline some of their payroll and HR processes with Greenshades Online or our actual payroll system. So definitely appreciate some of that feedback that we get from our clients along the way. And then as we're moving forward, a big piece of what we're touching on today is really what obstacles and opportunities are staffing companies seeing in this space. Obviously, the great resignation has happened across the last year, and we're hearing a lot about quiet quitting from places all over social media, whether it's Twitter or TikTok, et cetera. It's pretty important for HR professionals today to stay kind of up to date with what's going on in popular culture and how the workplace is being talked about. Now that remote work is very prevalent and essentially expected in a lot of places, staffing is one of those spots where it's not always remote, right? And it's also very important as we see a lot of companies unionizing and talking about unionizing. It's very, very important to stay up to date with kind of what that popular culture reference is to the workplace in general. And essentially, it's very, very important. It's critical to staffing companies specifically because they're getting those transit employees and those employees that might be working short-term in their organization and coming back and forth between different FEINs and working across multiple states at times, depending on what that staffing expertise might be, right? So it's critically important to the nature of their business and their ability to scale and grow their organization to stay up to date with some of that information. So we put together some stats that we're seeing right now in general, just across American staffing. 64% of employees in the industry fill gaps between jobs or help them land a job, meaning that's part of what I'm talking about related to, again, whether it's quiet quitting or the transient nature of how they're treating some of these gig works or these staffing placements that they're landing today. And I'm sure every staffing organization in here is very familiar with that. And that's a giant challenge for them. That's why we asked some of the questions at the beginning of this that we did on how hard it is to attract or land or retain employees, right? 20% of those employees, which is a big amount, right? The schedule flexibility is really what they care about. So again, paying attention to popular culture, we're hearing that obviously coming out of social media and coming out of our employees' communication. Really, they want the ability to have that scheduling flexibility and to have a good work-life balance that they respect and appreciate from wherever they're landing. And it's really important. What does that mean to them? Flexibility might mean different things to different types of employees and different age groups and different people with different focuses, whether they have families or whether they're looking forward to traveling and they need the ability to be remote at any given time. It's just really, really important to stay in touch with your employees and have the capabilities and measures to do so, whether that's an HR portal with feedback, whether that's regular one-on-ones or a one-on-one system where you're doing evaluations ongoing. You have to ensure that you have some of those measures in place to capture the information you need, and you're not just relying on your entire organization, having a general conversation all the time, right? So the staffing industry is uniquely suited to address a lot of these employment trends, but it is important to stay agile and to adapt to the change in the workplace landscape. That's what we do now, right? What are the real world implications behind these numbers that we just looked at on the screen? I mean, it's high volume onboarding, we know, is a big focus today. And obviously that's a big piece that Bullhorn specifically is looking to address with how they handle their applicant tracking system, how you look across resumes and information, right? So we expect high turnover. We expect to have to leverage a large applicant pool at any given time. So it's very important to be able to, move through those placements quickly, be able to recruit people appropriately, and constantly have a backfill ready to go as employees make different decisions, right? we have to understand what is a large pool for any portion of this business. What does that mean? What kind of segments do I need with that? What kind of skilled labor do I need? What kind of skill set do I need for any of those employees as well, right? There's a lot, we all know there's a lot of complications and essentially measurements that go into that information that staffing specific organizations have to pay attention to, right? The between jobs aspect for many of these contractors means how often they're getting paid, whether or not they can get a same day check, whether or not they can get access to their earned wages at any given time, is very, very important. And we've seen this through kind of the quote unquote gig work economy across the last couple of years, all the way through the pandemic to where we are today. It's become more and more critical that employees want access to the funds that they've earned as quickly as possible, right? So if you have a payroll piece that has the ability to do that, to be able to cut a same day check, pay that employee appropriately, pay it off schedule if you are doing a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly schedule, et cetera, and understanding whether that's going to cause you additional charges with whatever payroll system you're using. In reference to Greenshades, obviously we don't charge based off number of schedules. Whether you're cutting same day checks, we have a lot of capabilities to support that kind of flexibility with that payroll process as needed, right? So in post-COVID, the work from home, remote work, right, supporting workers regardless of where they live is critically important today. We all know that. But what's that mean? We're internally at Greenshades are seeing a lot of employees move. They're moving state to state. They're moving in different tax jurisdictions. If they're places in the Northeast with local taxes, and it's very important to keep more up to date with that now than it ever has been. And a lot of that isn't as dictated as it was by where you work or what job you have, and especially if you're a staffing organization just with a large pool of possible applicants and placements, then you're trying to keep track of that as much as possible, primarily only when they're actually getting a placement, right? So are you keeping track of where they're working, where they're living? Do you know the tax implications of all that information? Obviously, I touched on the beginning of this, how Greenshades can help with that, but these are just the questions that you constantly have to ask yourself as you're trying to stay compliant with what's happening in today's HR space, right? And then how do we work with Bullhorn to kind of adapt to some of those challenges and opportunities? We referenced, obviously, Bullhorn's applicant tracking system can, at scale, identify, attract, and connect you with specific applicants. And they've been doing this for a long time, 20 plus years, 10,000 plus clients, lots of integrations and lots of different types of staffing industry focuses that they've had. Greenshades has had a very wide horizontal approach to payroll as well. So we focus on staffing, but we also help a lot of different horizontal businesses. So if you're, say, a subset of, say, industrial staffing or construction staffing or something along those lines, not only do we have staffing experience, but we have that other industry experience as well that you're actually putting placements into. So if there's something specific, related to a different industry that might have different compliance or HR or payroll challenges that maybe isn't just generalized to staffing alone, you want to make sure you're working with an organization that has experience with that. We have a horizontal application that helps anybody paying employees in the United States, and across all of our integrations and the clients that we do have, we've helped pretty much every type of industry you could think of in the United States, right? So, when you're capturing that candidate information on the staffing side, are you tracking, again, where they work, where they live, what the residency information looks like, what the tax withholding information needs to look like in your payroll system? Are you having to do a bunch of mapping and a bunch of lookups in order to do that? Or are you using a system that's automated, right? There's a big difference from using an outsourced service and quote unquote not having to care about it versus an in-house system where you are tracking that information, but it is automated and you still have the streamlined feel to it, but you keep control of your finances, you keep control of your liquidity, and you keep control of kind of what's happening within that same day check realm that we were just mentioning, right? So it's very, very important to understand, how you're staying compliant as an employer of record, regardless of whether you're outsourcing payroll or outsourcing some of these HR activities. If it's your FEIN in your business, you're liable 100% of the time. Even if there is a complication in any software that you might be using or an outsourced service, they're liable up into a point, but as the employer of record, you're the one liable and that has to stay compliant at the end of the day. And everybody's utilized outsourced services across the board, and had different service or liability challenges at any given time, right? So ensuring that you take control of that or have control of it as much as you would like to and makes sense for your business is something that is critically important as you move and look at these kind of different options that you might have in the space, right? Specifically, if you are running an in-house process and looking at kind of these all-in-one type systems, what does that really mean to you? Are there workarounds? Are there still manual processes in place? Are you still having to, handle kind of the taxes on your own, because maybe you can cut checks, but you can't actually submit tax payments or tax e-files, and that still has to go through a separate system? Or on the applicant tracking side, are you having to export information and then re-import it into a different system? And same idea when W-4 information or I-9 information is getting completed. When we're talking about things like duplicate entry, it's not always just typing in or copying and pasting the same information. At times, it can be really just that manual workflow of uploading, downloading files, make sure they're going to the right place, or having to manually adjust them at any given time, right? The positive of working with companies like Greenshades and Bullhorn that do have such a strong relationship and integration is trying to ensure that you have that understanding of a single source of record that can pull and push to the different places that it needs to go, all the way through, applicant tracking, all the way down to the general ledger and whatever accounting package you might be using or finance system you might be using, right? So not necessarily a single source, right, but a single umbrella that is constantly talking to each other and ensuring it's the same system of record information being updated and pushed and pulled from the different places it needs to go, right? All right, another poll here before we get to the demonstration. And I'm going to pause my screen real quick as I set up that demo. So Tyler, if you can keep that poll up. And this poll is just, when are you next evaluating your payroll system? Obviously, as you may be outsourcing, you may be using multiple different vendors across tax, HR, or payroll. How often are you taking a look at that? That doesn't mean when are you going to make a change, but when are you going to evaluate your current process to ensure it's the right one for you and that you're staying as compliant as possible, right? So from here, we'll give it another 30 seconds or so, and then I will hop into a live environment for a demonstration to show a little bit about Greenshades Payroll, show our HR portal, as well as a little bit of the employee portal. This is a very high-level demo. So if you would like a one-on-one demo, you want to go a little bit more in depth into our product or the integration or your specific needs, please contact us or leave a mention in the chat, and we're happy to help as we follow up from this webinar. Okay. Now we are ready. So this is Greenshades Online. This is the base of our payroll system and our HCM system, essentially the admin side to our portal, right? So Greenshades Online has been around about 10 plus years right now out of Greenshades inception, probably a little bit longer than that actually. But we housed our payroll system within the same place that we were extending other payroll systems to ensure that any current client that was migrating over or even possibly use this for our year-end services, this is just an extension of that previous licensing. So they're not having to learn a brand new system, log into a brand new account, or create a new login or anything along those lines. This is all housed in the same place that you're used to if you're a previous Greenshades client. And if you're new to us, it's a very user-friendly portal here that we've created out of Greenshades Online. So once you log in, we actually create a kind of at-a-glance reporting page here, just so you can see kind of what's going on with your company. This is a per FEIN, a per company kind of workspace that we create. And then from here, it's reporting that you see as you initially log in. What happened within your last pay run? Are there any actual HR issues or HR pieces to actually address here on the left-hand side? Do we have employee evaluations due? Things like qualifying life events in our benefit system, all the way over to the employee side of things and the pay history, timesheets that they need to be approved, or if there's ACA compliance pieces that need to be addressed under those key performance indicators there. This is essentially just telling you what's happening within our tax engine and our payroll engine behind the scenes. Again, keeping you compliant every step along the way, but ensuring you have control to address any of these issues if you do see a problem. And if you don't, you're the one who is getting these notifications. You have the ability to either address them or say, this is how you want to run your business, right? So this is just a quick homepage view. From here, I'm going to drive to this employees tab. This actually gives us kind of the HR approval view. So essentially a big breakdown of what employees we have inside the system right now, inside the specific FEIN. And a lot of our kind of screens that you'll see kind of have additional ad hoc reporting measures. So if I ever needed to pull a quick report out of here, we have a lot of reporting capabilities, a lot of places to actually create report templates, whatever you might need, as well as canned reports available. But all along these sections, if you see some information and this is what makes sense for you to pull it out, if you have the ability to kind of pull information directly from the portal at a glance, drag and drop different columns as you need to directly in this section here, and then actually drive directly into an employee card if you needed to as well and make changes. All these red notification bubbles here on the left-hand side all expand, allow you to approve, deny, or send information back to an employee to make adjustments based off any of the requests that are coming in. Again, from profile changes to a benefits enrollment system that has a pretty expansive ACA key performance indicator dashboard, as well as the ability to do EDI files directly to the health vendors that you might be using. It's a very robust HR side that we do have with inside Greenshades Online. And then if HR really isn't your focus, you really just care about payroll, compliance, payroll taxes, garnishments, etc., then you would have kind of a sized down view of this portal, but still get all of the compliance focus that this system has. There's not any big difference between the payroll engine and utilizing payroll and HR through Greenshades. It's just what information is needed from you on the business side that you would like to focus on, right? So this is just me flipping to a quick payroll demo here. I'm going to run into an actual pay run that I've already opened. From here, you actually have the ability to run through an actual pay run. I'm going to show you the payroll screen itself really quick, just to show you any predetermined schedules, how those are populated. I can actually leave pay runs open if I have multiple administrators that need to come in here, maybe load in or approve time, and then maybe they're not responsible for benefits, but I have a different contact that's coming in here to make those adjustments. You can actually have multiple different people in those pay runs. We keep a full audit log. We keep the information saved online. So you yourself as an administrator can also be remote in all of these instances, whether you're running payroll at 2 a.m. On a work trip if you need to, or in your regular 9 to 5 hours Monday through Friday, whatever the case may be. We have capabilities for special pay runs, nice calculators for things like gross ups, etc. A lot of different features that kind of add on to the compliance aspect of this, but also ease of use to ensure you're not having to step out of this system and make changes in a different place to ensure that they update here. Everything can be done within both the pay run, the employee screens, or the actual backend setup based on what you might need. If you're making changes in a single pay run all the way to company-wide changes, you'll be able to see as I walk through this run where you can make some of those. Right, so this is an actual open pay run, just showing you any employees that I would have in a predetermined schedule would be pulled in here. If I was running a same-day check or an off-cycle run or anything like that, it would look exactly the same. I'm going to choose what employees might need to be included in that run. Across any of these steps, I have the ability to manually add in information. Say I need to add a one-off bonus, a one-off deduction, something along those lines. I have the capabilities and control to make those adjustments directly in the pay run itself. And then if there are long-term changes that I want to make sure are updated on the next schedule, et cetera, then I would make those in the back-end settings. But anything happening within a single run or same day that you might need, you have the capabilities to make those adjustments here. So you can kind of see some of these notification bubbles within the pay run itself. These are some of those compliance notifications that I was mentioning. So things like, if there are W-4 changes that are driving some of the adjustments that you might be seeing, or if I need to update somebody's hours because what was approved by the manager, he sent me a note it might be incorrect, I can do that directly in the pay run. We're going to save it. We're going to update it in an audit log in Greenshades, so I can always know that whatever admin actually logged in to make that change is going to be the person who did that in the system. And you can see here in that bottom left-hand corner, we're actually going to save that pay run when those changes are made as well. So you're not losing any of your work. You're not having to go back and make any changes to see what happened here. If I need to even compare to the previous pay run, we're going to update you and let you know, hey, this looks a little bit different than last time here up top, but you can also physically click this button and break it out to compare what that pay run looked like, what the hours look like, what the earnings look like, et cetera, directly in the pay run, right? So you're not having to do any different reconciliation steps or pull up a different page or have multiple screens open at one time to kind of juggle all of this compliance yourself. We're trying to give you and provide you all of the tools directly in front of you as you're moving through these options to ensure you have everything you need to actually complete the pay run and go net to check in one swift motion. This can be as fast as possible as you wanted, or if you wanted to keep this open throughout the week, and again, add and approve time, make adjustments as you need to, have multiple people making adjustments, whatever makes sense for your business. You can technically run a pay run in sub 5 minutes if you have all the information you need and you're just clicking the button, moving through it to get the checks out the door, and everything's great in your setup and ready to go as you start the pay run. A normal schedule is just going to take you a couple seconds as you kind of move through these options from deductions, benefits, and arrears, all kind of handling any of those benefits options as well as 401k, et cetera. Here, And then if I had different deductions or benefits actually built into the pay run, things like garnishments, you'll see that information here. The PTO accruals kind of happening in the background, but a lot of that compliance stuff is really just happening from those back-end settings that we have. But if you need to make any one-off changes, you saw as I updated the hours and earnings, that was very quick, just making a quick adjustment. I saw the comparison to the previous payroll directly on top of the screen, right? So a lot of that compliance stuff kind of happening in the background as you're actually in a payroll. And then getting directly to this review and submit screen, this is kind of showing me what the pre-register would look like for payroll here. So seeing with the breakdown, what I'm actually going to pay, what the taxes look like on this actual pay run itself. If I have employees that are, not technically errors, but getting a $0 paycheck, or if I had any errors that looked, like they might cause some additional issues down the line, then I'm going to see those pop-up notifications here up top. If it's a true error that might cause, whether a liability issue or a Medicare overpayment or something along those lines, you're going to see those as red notification bubbles that will ask you to address, but you do have the ability to generally override most of the time, unless it's causing a major issue that we know you don't want, right? You do also have the ability all the way up into this pre-register to actually see employee pay stub breakdowns and actually make changes directly on this all the way up into the end of this process. So if you're familiar with any legacy system where you were running payroll and you had to actually close out of a run and then restart it if you needed to make any of these changes or update employee records, you'll know that a lot of this is very much streamlined compared to what you might have been used to. And if you're using any other service today that looks comparable to this, then you'll see the compliance aspect of this is really what's driving a lot of the peace of mind as you're running through payroll here, because all of this is updating our tax piece here on the tax service. And as you're making changes on the HR side, it's all driving these changes directly in payroll, right? There's a full reporting section that comes out of the post-register screen. You have the ability to actually send the ACH file to your bank. You also can drive all the way down to taxes in a post payroll screen and do everything that you would need to do post payroll. A lot of this, again, is driving our actual tax service. And a big, I'd say, compliance and service difference that you're receiving from Greenshades is going to be built around kind of how we handle technical support and how we handle the guidance of using our software, or even up into, payroll tax assistance as needed, whether it's within the product or if you need to actually talk directly to a state, a locality agency, something along those lines, any government agency. You actually have a one-on-one representative with Greenshades that can hop on the phone with you, try to clear up any issue. If you ever, for whatever reason, have a liability issue, you get a letter in the mail, they're going to help you address that, get on the phone with the state if they need to, or help you respond with a letter of your own, depending on kind of what happened. But outside of that one-on-one assistance, this is a very easy to use kind of tax service. It's really a one, date tracking screen that's tracking the next liability payment, the next e-file that you would need to submit directly here in our portal, and then keeping historical records as needed, whether it's a payment or an e-file coming out of our system. Both of those look very similar. It's really a 2-button click where you're seeing a pay now or a file now option, and we're actually building that information directly in our portal. And then you have the ability to actually edit some of this information if you need to. Otherwise, you're approving the totals that we're calculating for you and submitting it directly through our system. Greenshades isn't floating any of your money. When I talk about control and liquidity, things of that nature, it really is all of those things, because we're not touching your money. It's getting debited from whatever state or government agency that you're submitting it to, very similar to how an e-file is submitted. You're seeing this information in Greenshades. You're saying this information looks good. That's how many employees I have in Alabama. All the wage information looks accurate and correct. I submit this. There's generally a deadline, but it's usually the same day or right the day before at 11 a.m. So we have the time to submit it through the back end to those state or government agencies. However, this is all under your control, and up until the day it's due, right? You have control both of the funds and the information. So if anything changes, within those windows, if you've ever used an outsourced service, et cetera, that's the biggest difference, is both that level of service as well as that control on when you're submitting and how. And again, right, we're not floating any of the money. It's all of your money moving directly to those government agencies, not Greenshades submitting anything for you with payments to us and then to the government agencies themselves, right? So trying to keep you compliant all along the way. This covers everything from localities, like I mentioned, to states and federal, as well as at the end of the year, the W-2 pieces for federal and 1099 and 1095C options. So really everything that you could think of for kind of taxes that you have to care about for your business as far as payroll taxes or the 1099 taxes are concerned, you'll handle through this portal, either through this payroll tax service or the year-end form piece there at the end of the year, right? So that is most of kind of the compliance section of this webinar. I will touch a little bit on kind of the employee side of things as I flip over here. So I talked a little bit about the HR pieces, our benefits enrollment options, posting pay stubs online. Just to give you a quick look at what that looks like, I'm going to impersonate a quick employee. This is the actual employee record here. So this is where we're housing when I talk about, keeping the record in Greenshades or the employee record, anything along those lines. This is where that information is housed, whether that is, payroll codes or all the way down to tax parameters coming from the W-4 or things like general ledger splits if there's specific dimensions or kind of splits that need to happen on a per employee basis or across a board. This is where all that information is housed. And when I talk about making adjustments in the payroll, you saw that. You also have the ability to make the adjustments on a per employee basis, and then you can make it on across your entire company and kind of the back end settings that I won't dive in deep to. Not bore anybody in here today. I'm not as exciting on the setting side of things as my buddy here, Chris, is. He does a lot of these demos and gets a lot more excited about those back end settings because he knows how much they help people. But this just shows you a little bit about that employee record and where you can make some of those changes. I'm going to actually take this employee so I can actually impersonate him on our actual employee portal. So the employee portal through Greenshades, we do have manager functionality on that side. They'd see kind of a size down view of the administrator side to be able to approve or make changes to any employee information that they actually manage. That's all driven from the actual settings on your side. You also have the ability to limit what modules they might have access to. This is skinned like it would be your company. So this is, green and blue, but this is all based off your company setup. If you wanted to have your logo here in the left-hand corner, if you didn't use any of these modules like time off or time sheets because that information will be coming through Bullhorn, then you're not even going to see those modules. So a lot of this is really just driven by your setup, giving the employee a quick view of kind of what's happening on the actual employee portal in your company based on what you wanted them to see. So if you want them to have a nice org chart, see their most recent pay stub, that kind of information all can be accessed through this portal as they need to update address information, dependents that are driving benefits, anything like that. That's all going to happen through these screens. The biggest portion is going to be used on kind of a week-to-week basis would be them just getting their pay stub information, or at the end of the year, their W-2s or 1095Cs. We do capture those consents at the end of the year as well to try to save you money on the print and mail. But this is where those employees would access, make changes, and adjust any of this information from benefits enrollment all the way to the tax side that I mentioned. And then if you're using us for any HR document capabilities or anything like that, we have everything from expense reports. We can do mileage reimbursements to basic employee evaluations, W-4 changes, a full HR document piece as well. We do have a full marketplace. So for things like learning management systems, or if you were looking for a specific pay card, maybe you were looking for what options might integrate with our system, we do have a full marketplace on our website as well. So if you need anything on the HR side, this is where your employees would access it. And then the administrator side, this is Greenshades Online. And this is day-to-day where most of the actual action would happen for your administrator. So I think that'll conclude my demo here. I don't want to drag on too long showing you all the bells and whistles here on the Greenshades side. So from this point, I'm going to flip over to Chris here in a second as he drives through and talks a little bit more about the Bullhorn integration, how some of this information actually feeds into Greenshades from that applicant tracking system to that employee card piece, to some of the tax options that I mentioned as well. All of that will be driven from that applicant tracking system if it's coming from the Bullhorn side or any other integration we might have.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob, for going through that product demo. And then just one additional thing that I wanted to call out here as we're, as Rob was covering all of that right there and sort of just talking about what that employee experience might look like. Another pretty common thing that happens with our staffing clients, especially for those using Bullhorn 1, for example, you might have your staffing employees that have a certain experience, maybe a more scaled back experience when they're logging into the employee portal, if there is any other kind of self-service system already in place. But you can kind of change that experience up depending on what type of employee it is. So then for for our more internal permanent employees, we might have a different experience. And then likewise, when it comes to sort of managing that payroll and HR process overall, as Rob was showing on the administrator portal, there's a lot that we're capable of doing, from really hire to retire. So when you're talking about core payroll versus managing the benefits, and managing open enrollment and all of that, whether it's from a segmentation of hey, they manage the staffing side of the business versus our internal employees, it could be that kind of delineation, or whatever else you may want to kind of bake into the system. You can have different roles with different permissions and levels of access, and as Rob highlighted there with the managers and supervisors as well, naturally being able to have a certain level of access. So just depending on kind of how you need to solve for that, it's certainly not a one-stop shop for anyone, in terms of one size fits all. There's a lot of flexibility there, but I think that's even more important in the staffing space. So with all that said, as we're talking about Greenshades and Bullhorn being together, working together here, just wanted to highlight a few things around this. Also did want to note, call out specifically, because there was a question that came in, a good question around sort of what the integration looks like today. So I'm going to touch on that primarily when we're talking about the integration here, thinking mostly about Bullhorn 1. So that's really sort of the system of the future, if you will. And so that's what we're working towards, and what we're working with primarily. So when we're talking about kind of the end-to-end integration, really on the Bullhorn 1 side, but then we have a lot of flexibility beyond that. As Rob mentioned, there's a lot of different systems that we integrate with, and then of course there's flexibility beyond just applications that we have direct integrations with. There's a lot of data to get, or a lot of methods to get data to and from the Greenshades platform. So, but as we're thinking about Bullhorn and Greenshades working hand in hand, really as we're talking about the kind of the hire to onboarding to then just sort of that ongoing maintenance and ongoing work, depending on what you want that experience to look like. That data is going to be flowing directly from Bullhorn into Greenshades. So there's a lot of the data that's already proven, field proven, sitting here, allowing Bullhorn to be the experts on the staffing side, doing what they do so well, and then allowing Greenshades to step in and help with the compliance, especially with the payroll and taxes, and a lot of really self-service, robust self-service capabilities that are in place. So a lot of the things that Rob was just going through. And then finally, just to note here, we talked about this a little bit earlier in this session, but right now the idea of these hybrid workforce, there's been so much obviously that's happened in the last couple of years, and there's been so much of an impact on the workforce. As we noted earlier, staffing is in a really good place to help with that, and there's some high demand for this right now. But really, the platform is really designed to be used, across the board, all sorts of different types of workers. We talked about how you can kind of change that experience a little bit depending on what type of worker it is, but certainly available from anywhere at any point. It's going to be available 24/7. It's obviously web-based and quite accessible. So just to kind of wrap up on the integration topic again, very, very high level, but just in its simplest form, this is really what it looks like. So when we're talking about candidate data coming from Bullhorn, specifically what this looks like, we have candidate data that's getting added into Bullhorn. There's going to be a kind of a certain level of detail that we're going to get about that employee from that candidate record. And then when that candidate record is assigned to a placement and that placement is approved, there's going to be an additional level of details that we can grab from that employee to create sort of a whole kind of holistic employee record within Greenshades. And that employee record, it's critical that we have the data that we need in order to appropriately handle those taxes, right? Because ultimately Greenshades is absolutely assisting with the tax reporting and handling the heavy lifting when it comes to generating these electronic returns and knowing when liability payments are coming due and facilitating those tax returns and payments to get to go to these various agencies, which depending on how many states you're operating in, there's a lot of different agencies that you're having to deal with. So Greenshades is taking care of that aspect. But during the payroll process, it is critical that there's full insight on, where does that worker live, where did that worker perform these duties, and then what other relevant factors are going to come in to play around that employee, and then obviously things like overtime and then just overall number of hours that they're getting compensated for. So there's a lot of information that we want to make sure that we fully capture, so that Greenshades is then capable of doing all those tax calculations, because it's not just reporting it to those agencies, but it's also understanding what taxes should be in place for any given employee. And again, that was something that Rob did a nice job of highlighting. So critical that we get that data. That data is going to be flowing directly from Bullhorn into the Greenshades platform. So a couple screenshots here just to reference when we're looking at that pay run process, which Rob walked through earlier. Straightforward, 6-step process, as Rob mentioned. Depending on kind of what all you're doing in there, you can knock out a pay run very quickly. And when we're on that hours and earnings steps, the overall experience really works the same, which is very nice. Whether the data is coming from Bullhorn or not, the overall pay run experience is very similar. So with Greenshades, when you're using Greenshades, especially for both your staffing employees, but then also your in-house employees, the overall user experience for you doesn't really change, and the payroll process remains the same. So when we get to that hours and earnings step, this is where that data is just automatically populating. There's no export that you have to do. That data is coming directly from Bullhorn 1. For other systems in place, be it not Bullhorn 1 or any other system where you might have time and attendance data coming from, if you're using the Greenshades time and attendance system, obviously we'll pull that data directly into a pay run. But if you're using a third-party time and attendance system to collect those hours from your workers, that data can be imported directly into the pay run. There's different flat file options for bringing in those hours and earnings. But if you're using Bullhorn 1, as you produce those payable charges, we set those up. We have the employees and the placements. When it's time to pay those workers and to produce those charges, you set up those payable charges in Bullhorn, select payroll export, and then at that point, that data through back into APIs, that data is flowing into Greenshades automatically. So literally, you can go into your pay run. There's no hours and earnings there. You close out. You go into the Bullhorn. You set it and say, okay, I'm ready to get these employees paid. Come back to the pay run, and magically, all of those employees are loaded up here where they need to be. And that also works for adjustments, negative pay. So if you have any adjustments that need to happen, there's adjustments workflows within Greenshades directly, but you can also just easily enough put in the negative value into Bullhorn, and we'll pull that right in. So quite a bit that's going on there. I know we went through kind of high level some of the challenges that staffing is dealing with right now, and then we talked a little bit about how Greenshades can assist. As noted earlier, there's really challenges across the board right now. It's a very unique environment to be operating in currently, and that certainly is the case with staffing. But there's a lot of opportunities here for staffing, and certainly partnering with Greenshades can help with that. And so just to highlight a couple of these things again, both Rob and I have been fortunate to be a part of Greenshades for many years at this point, but we're not alone. Both in other leaders at Greenshades with us that have been here for many years, but of course our customers as well. So we've had the customers. Obviously, we've continued to grow over the years. I've had customers that have continued to use us for 10 plus years. Customers that predate my time here at Greenshades. So people come to Greenshades and they stay with Greenshades, which is truly an amazing thing, and certainly a great place to be a part of. So,
our
as
average
noted here,
retention rate is 11 plus years, right, Chris? And I think we have some of our largest clients have been with us since our inception at the 20-year mark. I know we were just talking about that last week. So pretty incredible to see that there are people that predate us. Obviously, it's been such an evolving company, and a lot of our products have evolved along the way. We just rolled out a certification module within the last year, and then obviously this integration and other integrations to other ERPs, and we expect to continue to evolve these relationships and these integrations, both some of the Bullhorn pieces. I know some of the questions that were referenced in the chat earlier. Definitely appreciate that. And if you have any more, feel free to keep them coming. But this integration will continue, and this relationship will continue to expand and evolve as we do with our own product, right? We are pretty picky, I would say, with how we handle integrations, as we don't list 100 of them are on our website for a specific reason. We like to focus on our core compliance value, and some of the information that you see here on this screen. That's our primary focus, right? And if we can do that through some specific integrations, then those are the ones that we pick. And we believe Bullhorn is a strong partner and a good partner that we have a lot of mutual clients with, even prior to having an integration. So it makes a lot of sense for us, and it will only continue to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there's oops. Well, I can go ahead and wrap up and jump into the poll question.
And Chris, just to put you on the spot again, as you talk to a lot of companies managing payroll, and obviously are a certified payroll professional yourself, what do you see as one of the most challenging aspects of managing payroll today in relation to these answers, and obviously specifically to staffing companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that inevitably, and it really is kind of consistent across, across the board. I mean, I think that staying current with regulatory challenges is, I mean, it's hard for that not always to be the big one. And I see similar feedback as well when talking with other payroll professionals or attending other, payroll association events. That's always a big thing. I think that with staffing specifically, though, I don't think we have an option for it here, is, when we have these employees that are working and living across different, geographical regions, I mean, that gets really challenging. And as I think you mentioned earlier in the call, Rob, it's even more challenging now with to kind of blend in the remote workforce on top of that. So you have, workers who have historically been jumping between different job sites, and that has tax implications. But then you also have kind of your more internal folks who maybe historically and traditionally have been a little bit easier to manage, and now they're working remote, and maybe they're moving into different states because they say, hey, I'm not associated with a home office anymore, I can live wherever. And then that introduces a lot of really unique and somewhat fun but somewhat scary tax challenges for businesses to deal with.
Well, I guess fun is depending on who you're talking to, right? If somebody's talking to you, I know you're getting a kick out of it. Yeah, and I would say on top of that, I mean, I would say it definitely falls into regulatory challenges, but what I think you and I hear a lot of is when, there are employees that work between multiple companies or multiple FEINs, and there are, regulatory pieces that you have to keep track of, how many hours they're working across all of those FEINs. And again, that definitely falls into some of the ACA pieces and some other things as well, especially with things like sick time and, some of that changing kind of landscape right now, right? So a lot of different regulatory challenges, but some unique to staffing companies, some not really, some really just, unique to the United States and how complicated some of our tax system is, right? Cool. So exactly. I think 5 more seconds, poll shut down right now. Perfect. Thank you, Tyler. And I think that concludes most of our webinar, right? I think from here it rolls to the Q&A section, right? So if you do have any questions, if there's anything that we can answer for you, we do have a couple minutes left here. If not, we'll give it about 30, 45 seconds. If we don't see anything, then we'll give everybody a couple minutes to get to their 1 o'clocks, because I know everybody has back-to-back, so that we all work from home. Nobody needs breaks, right?
That's right. And I will call it here too. There was a question around supporting employees working in, or specifically, can you pay the same employee under different pay periods in the same week, for example, biweekly and monthly tax rates? So there's different ways to handle that. In short, yes, it can be done. So we have these payroll schedules that are set up that are more for kind of predefined periods where regular recurring employees, but then we can also do one-off and special pay runs. So depending on what the scenario is, whether it's a one-time need or not, that can be done. And then also I would say that what we see a lot of times while implementing clients is, sometimes we have routines that are in place and business practices that are in place because they're best practice. And then in other times it's just because, we were limited by systems we've had historically. We've certainly dealt with that internally at different points. And so the nice thing about this is that there's a lot of different ways to approach it. So it may be a situation now where using Greenshades, you can limit the number of actual different checks that you need to do, but you can still have all the taxes and monthly deductions and things like that still are easy to manage. So we can certainly work through that with you.
Great. Thanks for answering that, Chris. Hopefully that answered your question, Linda. If not, we can follow up directly to make sure you have what you need. If we can help anybody else with anything else, please let us know. Feel free to visit our website, greenshades.com. And if you wanted to see a more full-length demonstration, feel free to contact us there and let us know you got some information from the webinar, but you wanted some more. Otherwise, we will send a follow-up as well, and you can respond to that. Or if you need Chris or I directly, it's rbright@greenshades.com or chadden@greenshades.com. Happy to help you as you have any questions, whether it's specific to Bullhorn, payroll, or anything else. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, Chris, for your wise words as always. And thank you, everybody. Have a good day.